What happened at that Coldplay concert last weekend has sent the internet into a complete frenzy. CEO of Astronomer Byron and Chief People Officer at the same company were caught in what appeared to be a very intimate moment on the kiss cam. And now what I'm seeing is a lot of people are suddenly experts on their morals, on their character, and on their worth as human beings. But here's what I want to talk about today, and it might just challenge everything that you think about when it comes to judgment, compassion, and what it really means to be a human being. My name's Rajasekar, and I work with people every single day, and I see the messiest parts of what it is to be a human being. And what have I seen in response to this situation? I truly believe it reflects more about us as a society than it has anything to do with these two individuals. Now listen, I'm not here to defend anything that they're doing. I've always said that cheating is wrong, full stop. People have decisions that they can make, and often people make some really poor choices. I just want to change the angle and the lens in which we look through when it comes to this particular situation. It appears that in our rush to judge these two individuals, we've forgotten that behind every poor decision, every moment that goes viral, every mistake, there is a wounded individual. And the slight challenge with the response at the moment is if you see through all of the comments and videos and everything, you've seen a whole range of different experiences. You've seen people taking the complete mickey out of them. You've seen people being extremely aggressive towards them. You've seen some people show a little bit of compassion. But on the whole, what I've observed is that more people are completely going to town on them and just saying they're vile, they're horrible, they're cruel, they're calculated, etc., etc. But here's the thing. We don't know anything about these two individuals. We don't know anything about what they were going through at the time. We know nothing about their existing marriages as far as what goes on behind closed doors. Were there needs that weren't being met? Were there, other forms of emotional abuse, etc.? We don't know. It could be that they are just nasty people. Could be. But it could be that they might be hurting from various experiences in the marriage, or what I've observed over the years with working with clients is that so many of our wounds that we've been holding on to come from childhood trauma of some sort. It doesn't have to be extreme forms of abuse or anything like that. It could be that when you were younger that you didn't get the praise and the appreciation that you wanted. And so what you felt like you needed to do was achieve and achieve and achieve in order to get the love that you're looking for from your mum or your dad. Or you were constantly getting criticized over and over and over. Or you observed your father who was a cheater and he ended up operating like that. And so even though you said you weren't going to do that, you ended up carrying a lot of those behaviors into your current relationship and so on. We know nothing about those experiences. Now, does any of this actually excuse this behavior? Of course not. Does there need to be consequences for their actions? 100%. And my heart absolutely breaks for the kids and other close people around those individuals who are going to have to deal with it pretty tough. I can imagine that paparazzi and all these different media outlets and so on are just all over them like a rash at the moment, and I know that's really, really challenging for them. But despite all of this, what it does say, in my opinion, is shows a collective consciousness and emotional maturity as a collective. Now, if we think about this for a second, what is it that leads an individual to put it all on the line, to risk everything that they've got, family, kids, career, everything? Why would they go down that path to risk everything just to have moments of intimacy with another individual? Why? What's the reason? Why would you do that? But the question we have to ask ourselves is what wounds are driving that particular behavior? As I said before, maybe they felt unseen in their marriage. Maybe they were desperate for some form of validation and they didn't get it. Maybe they didn't have healthy role models in terms of the relationships that they observed when they were younger. And so therefore they didn't quite know how to navigate different circumstances or conflict or, dealing with emotional challenges in a healthy way. Now, I'm not psychoanalyzing these two individuals because I don't know them. I know absolutely nothing about them apart from what, we're reading online and so on. So it's very limited information. But what I do know is that when we act from our wounds and we disconnect from our higher self, we make poor decisions and we don't have the sort of judgment that we normally would do when we've actually healed a lot of those wounds. But what I truly believe in my soul is that the universe or God, whatever you subscribe to, presents us with whatever challenge that we need in that moment to force us to grow in the ways that we need to. And sometimes that gets really, really messy. And sometimes that means that we end up on a kiss cam on a jumbotron at a Coldplay concert. Sometimes that happens in quiet moments of reflection. Sometimes that happens when we get made redundant at work. Sometimes that means when our marriage is going to end, or whatever it is. There are different teachers and different moments. Now, I want to talk to you about a principle called the mirror effect. And this part's going to potentially make you a little bit uncomfortable, but it is something that if you can grasp this, it can totally transform your world. If you're getting triggered by this situation, potentially even by this video, and it's just sending you into a frenzy or just bringing up some just red hot anger inside of you, having that desire to want to destroy these people online or just spread all of your pain onto your news feed and just share to everyone about how horrible these individuals are and so on, I want you to pause for a second and ask yourself, why is this situation triggering me so much? What is it about what they did that is hitting home so much? Because our triggers are our teachers, and the people that hurt us the most are also our deepest teachers. When we have a disproportionate response to a particular experience, and I'm not in any way trying to bring down any of the pain that you've had to go through, because, you know, if you've been on the receiving end of infidelity, look, I totally get it. I see it every single day with my clients and it breaks my heart. But if it's something that's triggering you at such a deep level, if you read a story like this, then what that is doing is bringing forth the pain that hasn't truly been healed at the deepest level. Maybe you've been betrayed and that's bringing up that horrible pain again. Maybe you've been the one that's actually inflicted that pain and it's brought up a huge amount of shame. And so you end up just projecting it outwards. Maybe you've never been allowed to make mistakes on any level, and so seeing another person make those mistakes terrifies you. This isn't about letting anyone off the hook here. This is about recognizing that our response to others is a direct reflection of our relationship with our own humanity. Now listen, as I said, I know this might trigger some of you, but I want you to just consider one thing. And I'm going to offer up a little invitation here. A real calling of operating from a higher level of consciousness. What if we chose differently? What if, instead of destruction, we chose compassion? What if we held space for the complexity of a human being? You know, it's possible to hold two truths at the same time. One is, what they did was wrong. And the second is, what if I chose to hold space for compassion for those two individuals? I absolutely believe that these two individuals have entered into the darkest days of their life. I mean, just think about it for a second. Imagine you made a mistake. Imagine you did something stupid, intentionally or unintentionally. And then that mistake was suddenly broadcast to hundreds of millions of people overnight. What would that do to you? How would that make you feel? Genuinely, how would that make you feel? How much would you suffer? Imagine all of the people around you, they would know everything. People you don't know everything about you. You'll constantly be under the spotlight. You wouldn't want to leave home. You'll definitely be in some form of depression. But what happened if we just held some space for a little bit of compassion? And I truly pray, and I mean this sincerely, I truly pray that those two individuals can heal, that they can recognize the mistakes that they made, and that they can utilize this experience for some form of good, to put an end, if it's their childhood traumas, to put an end to that stuff so they don't affect any more people in any negative ways moving forward. Because there's no doubt that these kind of behaviors will have some form of impact on their children and so on. It's not about being soft and naive in any way. This is about operating from a higher level of consciousness. Because, for example, if a lot of your reaction has come from the pain of your own experiences of betrayal, once again, that is just your own pain that is reacting to the situation. So actually, the only person that impacts is you. And the question is if you have been on the receiving end of infidelity, do you want that experience to continue to bring up all that pain on the inside? Or do you want to be free from it? That doesn't mean you forget about that person. It doesn't mean that you continue to be with them if you don't want to or anything like that. It doesn't mean you should even be in the relationship still. But it's how much of an emotional charge does that experience still have on you? And if it does, and if this experience brings it up in you, it's a really powerful lesson for you to work through some of that internal healing. And another important point to remember is that when we actually tear other people down, we're actually tearing down the very fabric of humanity. Every person that comments with all this anger and rage and just, death threats and all of these sorts of things, ultimately deciding that these two people are irredeemable, what effectively is happening here is that you're contributing to a world where mistakes are met with destruction rather than as an opportunity for growth and compassion. So what's the path forward? How do we respond to individuals who've basically fallen from grace? Firstly, we take a pause. We truly feel what's on the inside and ask ourselves the question, what is it that's coming up inside of me that's forcing me to react the way that I am right now? And this goes with any situation, not just in this particular scandal. Secondly, we remember that compassion and consequences can coexist. We can want accountability for those individuals, but still hold the space for them to actually heal and grow. Thirdly, we model the kind of world that we actually want to live in. Do you want to live in a world where your worst moment defines you for the rest of your life? I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, have any of us truly ever done things that we didn't regret, or that, we didn't make mistakes? We're like, man, I wish I hadn't have done that. Some of us greater than others. I know I surely have. But do you want to live in a world where mistakes are met with destruction? And if you don't, then don't create that world for others. Every ounce of energy that you put in contributes to the collective consciousness. My final words are, Andy Byron and Kristin Cabot are learning life's harshest lessons right now. They're facing consequences that will reshape their entire life and their entire existence on so many levels. They don't need our hatred. They need what we all need: the space to learn, the space to grow, the space to heal. Now, some of you might be sitting there and thinking to yourselves, but what does that mean, that if someone goes off and murders someone, that I should just forgive them? Once again, individuals must have consequences for their actions. I'm a firm believer in that. And as I say this, my mind always goes back to one of the survivors of the mosque attack in Christchurch, New Zealand back in 2019. And I think his wife had died. And he went up on national TV and he said on TV, he says, I do not hate this man. I don't agree with anything that he's done, but I don't want to fill my heart up with anger, and I don't want it to bubble up like a volcano. I want to fill it up with love. When we heal, when we grow, that energy has a ripple effect onto others. Choose compassion, choose consciousness, choose to be part of healing instead of harm. God bless you, much love, and I'll talk to you in the next video.